In the digital age, data has become a valuable asset for individuals, organizations, and countries. However, along with value comes increasing risks: information leaks, cyber attacks, data theft, and privacy violations. Therefore, ensuring data safety and security is not only a technical requirement, but also an administrative and ethical responsibility in the digital environment. Chapter 6 will explore with us the principles, tools, and solutions to protect data, the foundation of a transparent, trustworthy, and sustainable digital society. Main contents include 6.1 Identification of network information security threats, 6.2 Protection of personal and organizational data, 6.3 Security policies and privacy rights. We begin with Chapter 6.1 Identifying network information security threats. We are living in a digital data explosion. With the strong development of the Internet of Things, cloud computing, and artificial intelligence, every day, billions of devices are connected, creating huge amounts of data and opening up unprecedented opportunities for socio-economic development. However, along with that is the increase in cyber threats. From attacks targeting individuals, password theft, or financial fraud, to large-scale infrastructure attacks on banking systems, hospitals, or even the national energy grid. This shows that information security has become a global challenge. The core of information security is encapsulated in 3 principles: confidentiality, integrity, and availability, often referred to as the CIA triad. This means that data must be kept private from unauthorized access, must be accurate, must not be modified without authorization, and must be available when legitimate users need it. Some of the most affected areas are finance, healthcare, education, e-commerce, and e-government. These are all areas directly related to human life, contain sensitive data, and have a great impact on social stability. The current challenge is that cybercrime is increasingly sophisticated, high-tech, anonymous, and has transnational elements. This makes detection, investigation, and handling much more difficult than before. In short, in the context of data explosion and IoT, information security is not only a technical issue, but also a vital factor to protect individuals, businesses, and countries in the digital age. When studying data security and privacy, there are 4 fundamental concepts that we need to understand: threats, vulnerabilities, and risks. First is threat. This is any action or event that can cause damage to a system's resources. Resources here can be hardware, software, databases, data files, or even physical network infrastructure. For example, a denial of service attack or password theft are all considered threats. Next is weakness. This is a defect or error that exists in the system, which can be in hardware or software, including operating systems and applications. For example, an outdated security device or an application that has not been patched are all weaknesses. Third is vulnerability. In essence, a vulnerability is a weakness that can be exploited. In other words, not all weaknesses are dangerous, but if the weakness allows a threat to attack the system, it becomes a security vulnerability. For example, a bug in the source code that allows a hacker to gain unauthorized access to a database is a serious vulnerability. Finally, there is risk. Risk is the possibility that a threat will successfully exploit a vulnerability to attack or harm the system. Risk only really appears when the threat and the vulnerability meet. For example, if the system has a SQL injection vulnerability and a hacker discovers it, the risk of a data attack is very high. In short, the threat is the agent, the weakness is the potential vulnerability, the vulnerability is the weakness that can be exploited, and the risk is the combination that leads to the risk of attack. Understanding this relationship is the foundation for building effective security solutions. In data security and privacy, threats can come from many different sources. For ease of understanding and management, we can classify them into 3 main groups: people, technology, and management processes. First, human threats. This is the most common form, including social attacks such as social engineering, phishing, or insider threats. The danger is that they exploit people's carelessness, lack of knowledge, or trust to penetrate the system. Second, technology threats. These are forms of direct attacks on technical infrastructure, such as malware, ransomware, distributed denial of service, DDoS, or zero-day exploits. This type often causes rapid and widespread damage. Third, threats from processes and management. These threats originate from weaknesses in the way the system is operated, such as misconfiguration, lack of patching, or weak security processes. They create an open door for hackers to easily penetrate. In reality, cyber attacks rarely appear in isolation, but are often a combination of many factors. For example, a phishing attack on a person can lead to the installation of malware on the device, and if the organization lacks monitoring or response processes, the consequences will be more serious. In short, threats in information security can come from people, technology, and management processes. Understanding and fully identifying all three factors will help us build a more comprehensive and solid security system. Common types of cyber attacks: phishing, malware, and ransomware, DDoS, SQL injection, MITM. Phishing is one of the most common and dangerous forms of cyber attack today. This is an online fraud through emails, messages, or fake websites, which are sophisticatedly designed to deceive users. The main purpose of phishing is often to steal sensitive information, such as login names, passwords, credit card information, or to install and spread malware on the victim's device. Examples of familiar fake emails are, for example, an email announcing that your bank account has been locked with a link to a fake login website. If the user enters the information, the data will immediately fall into the hands of the attacker. Or an email pretending to be the Human Resources Department sent to employees, asking them to download an Excel or PDF file to update their payroll, which actually contains malware. The danger of phishing is that it exploits human trust and carelessness, making users vulnerable even when the technical system is protected. Therefore, raising awareness and skills to identify phishing is the most important measure to prevent this type of attack.
Trong thế giới an toàn thông tin, một trong những mối đe dọa nghiêm trọng nhất chính là phần mềm độc hại malware. Đây là thuật ngữ chung để chỉ những chương trình được thiết kế nhằm xâm nhập hệ thống mà không được phép của người dùng. Malware có nhiều dạng khác nhau như virus, trojan, spyware hay rat. Chúng có thể đánh cắp dữ liệu, kiểm soát hệ thống từ xa hoặc trực tiếp phá hoại hạ tầng kỹ thuật. Trong số các loại malware, ransomware, mã độc tống tiền là mối nguy hiểm đặc biệt. Cơ chế hoạt động của nó khá đơn giản nhưng vô cùng hiệu quả. Mã hóa toàn bộ dữ liệu của nạn nhân, sau đó yêu cầu trả tiền chuộc để được giải mã. Khi đó, tổ chức hoặc cá nhân sẽ rơi vào tình thế tiến thoái lưỡng nan, hoặc mất dữ liệu, hoặc phải trả tiền để chuộc lại dữ liệu của chính mình. Tác động của ransomware đã được minh chứng qua nhiều vụ việc thực tế. CryptoLock xuất hiện năm 2013, được coi là một trong những mã độc tống tiền diện rộng đầu tiên, gây hoang mang toàn cầu. Đến năm 2021, vụ Colonial Pipeline tại Mỹ cho thấy sức tàn phá ghê gớm hơn. Chỉ một cuộc tấn công ransomware đã khiến cả hệ thống cung cấp năng lượng quy mô quốc gia bị tê liệt, gây thiệt hại hàng tỷ đô la và ảnh hưởng đến đời sống hàng triệu người dân. Một số kiểu tấn công mạng thường gặp hiện nay gây ra hậu quả nghiêm trọng cho hệ thống và người dùng. Thứ nhất là DDoS, District Denial of Service. Đây là dạng tấn công từ chối dịch vụ phân tán. Kẻ tấn công sử dụng một mạng lưới máy tính bị nhiễm botnet để tạo ra một cơn bão lưu lượng gửi đến máy chủ mục tiêu. Kết quả là dịch vụ bị quá tải và ngừng hoạt động. Ưu điểm nguy hiểm của DDoS là dễ triển khai và gây gián đoạn tức thì, khiến các trang web thương mại điện tử, ngân hàng trực tuyến hoặc cổng dịch vụ công bị tê liệt. Thứ hai là SQL injection. Đây là kỹ thuật chèn các câu lệnh SQL độc hại vào những trường nhập liệu của ứng dụng web. Nếu ứng dụng không kiểm tra kỹ dữ liệu đầu vào, hacker có thể truy xuất trái phép, chỉnh sửa hoặc thậm chí chiếm toàn quyền kiểm soát cơ sở dữ liệu. SQL injection đặc biệt nguy hiểm với các hệ thống lưu trữ thông tin cá nhân, tài chính hay dữ liệu nhạy cảm. Thứ ba là man in the middle, hay còn gọi là meme. Trong kiểu tấn công này, kẻ tấn công đứng giữa hai bên giao tiếp, âm thầm chặn và chỉnh sửa dữ liệu mà người dùng không hề hay biết. Tấn công meme thường xảy ra ở các mạng Wi-Fi công cộng không an toàn, hoặc khi người dùng bị dẫn đến một website có chứng chỉ SSL giả. Hậu quả là thông tin nhạy cảm như mật khẩu, số thẻ tín dụng có thể bị đánh cắp. Người gửi lạ hoặc giả mạo, địa chỉ email trông gần giống nhưng khác vài ký tự, vd, support@paypal1.com thay vì support@paypal.com. Hành động: kiểm tra kỹ địa chỉ, không nhấp link, mở trang chính thức bằng cách gõ tay URL. Đường link bất thường, URL dài, chứa ký tự lạ hoặc tên miền không khớp với tổ chức hành động. Giây chuột lên link để xem địa chỉ thật. Chỉ truy cập trang chính thức bằng trình duyệt, không click. ngôn ngữ khẩn cấp, đe dọa, thông điệp tạo áp lực, tài khoản sẽ bị khóa, xử lý ngay cảo, nhằm khiến người nhận hành động vội vàng. Hành động, bình tĩnh, xác minh thông tin qua kênh chính thức, call hotline, app chính thức. File đính kèm không an toàn, tệp S, zip, SQR hoặc tài liệu có macro, Word, Excel có thể chứa mã độc. Hành động, không mở file lạ, quét bằng phần mềm diệt virus. Nếu cần, yêu cầu file ở dạng an toàn, PDF và xác thực nguồn. Thiếu yếu tố cá nhân hóa, lời chào chung chung, đơ custom, thay vì tên thật hoặc thông tin cụ thể về tài khoản. Hành động, nghi ngờ với email chung chung, kiểm tra thông tin trên kênh chính thức trước khi hành động. Mẹo nhanh, nếu nghi ngờ, không nhấp, không mở file, không trả lời, xác minh qua kênh chính thức hoặc xóa.
Unlike technical intelligence attacks, social engineering is a form of attack based on human psychology. Because it must overcome firewalls or complex encryption, the attack will benefit the gullible, the lack of vigilance or psychological pressure to achieve the goal. The goal of social engineering is often to make the victim voluntarily provide sensitive information, money, or system access. This is why this type of attack is especially dangerous. There is no exploitation of machines, but exploitation of people themselves. Some technical forms that can be mentioned: pretending, the attacker builds a fake, thinking that IT staff is asking for a password or fake warning to request data. Baiting, using bait, for example, placing a USB containing malware in a public place or providing a link to download free software, but actually contains a virus. Tailgating, taking advantage of the scheme and access control, following people with valid cards to enter restricted areas. Urgency and fear, create a sense of urgency or scare. Think of your account will be locked in 24 hours to force the victim to act slightly yellow. Social engineering is not only a technology issue but also a problem of human formula and habit. The most effective way to prevent is to increase vigilance, verify information skills, and not act rashly when faced with unexpected problems. To protect personal data and accounts in the digital environment, there are some basic principles that every user needs to follow. First, carefully check the origin of emails and websites before clicking. A fake link or phishing email may only differ by a few characters, but it is enough to steal information. Second, never share your password or OTP code with anyone. Banks, online services, or official agencies do not ask for passwords over the phone or email. Third, enable multi-factor authentication (MFA) for important accounts such as email, social networks, or financial services. This is an additional layer of security that helps prevent unauthorized access, even if the password is exposed. Fourth, install and regularly update security software such as antivirus and firewall. This helps the system detect and block new threats. Fifth, pay attention to information security awareness training for employees and students. Technology only protects one part; the human factor determines whether the system is safe or not. Finally, when detecting signs of abnormality, report the incident immediately to the IT help desk, Incident Response Center, CERT, or service provider. A quick response will help minimize damage. Information security is not just the responsibility of IT professionals, but the responsibility of all of us. Just by following these basic principles, each individual has contributed to building a safer and more sustainable digital environment. Security risk management can be understood as a continuous process, including identifying, assessing, handling, and monitoring risks in information systems. The most important goal of this process is to minimize the impact of threats to an acceptable level, helping the organization maintain safe operations in the digital environment. One of the most popular risk management frameworks today is the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, CSF. This framework is divided into 5 functional groups: identify assets, important data, and potential risks. This is the foundation step to know what needs to be protected. Protect. Deploy preventive measures such as multi-factor authentication, firewalls, data encryption to reduce the possibility of attack. Detect. Continuously monitor the system to promptly recognize abnormalities, signs of intrusion, or unauthorized behavior. Respond. When an incident occurs, there needs to be a quick response process to localize, limit damage, and notify promptly. Restore. restore the system to normal operating state, and at the same time draw lessons to prevent recurrence. Security risk management is not just about preventing attacks, but a closed circle from identifying, protecting, detecting to responding and recovering. Following this process correctly will help the organization build a system that is safe, flexible, and highly resilient to all cyber threats. Information Security Risk Management Process according to TCVN 10295:2014. Setting up the context. Need to provide overview information, objectives, scale, scope, and components of the system that needs to be protected. Risk assessment. Need to perform risk identification, risk analysis, and risk estimation. The result of implementing this content is to identify assets, weaknesses, threats, consequences, and impact levels for agencies and organizations when risks occur to assets. Risk handling. Need to identify risk handling options, including management and technical measures to be able to handle and minimize possible threats to assets, leading to consequences for agencies and organizations. Risk acceptance. Need to determine the level of risk acceptance and the remaining risks after handling, because the system may have risks that cannot be completely handled but can only be minimized. Next, we come to Chapter 6.2, Protecting Personal and Organizational Data. Personal data is defined as information that is linked to an individual and can be used to identify that person, either directly or indirectly. This is a particularly important asset because it is closely linked to the privacy and security of each person in the digital society. Examples of personal data include full name, identity card number or citizen identification number, address, phone number, email, banking information, location data, biometric characteristics such as fingerprints or face, and online habits. Personal data is classified into two main groups. The first is basic personal data, including common information such as full name, date of birth, address, gender, image, phone number. These are common data frequently shared in daily life. Second is sensitive personal data, including financial data, health information, biometric data, political views, religion, and other aspects of private life. This type of data needs to be protected at a higher level, because if leaked, it will cause serious risks to individuals and organizations. Personal data is the digital fingerprint of each person in cyberspace. Clearly identifying the concept and classifying data is the first step to building privacy protection mechanisms and ensuring information security for each individual. Passwords are always considered the key to protecting accounts. However, if not managed properly, passwords are the most vulnerable point to exploitation. To manage passwords safely, there are three basic principles. First, use strong passwords, at least 12 characters and a combination of uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and special characters. Second, never reuse the same password for multiple accounts, because if one account is compromised, all other accounts will be at risk. Third, use a password manager to securely store and automatically fill in passwords. However, passwords alone are not enough. A more effective solution is multi-factor authentication (MFA). This mechanism adds a layer of security beyond the password, which can be an OTP code sent via SMS, an authentication app like Google Authenticator or Authy, or even biometrics like fingerprints and facial recognition. MFA helps minimize the risk of account exposure, even if the password has been stolen. Strong passwords combined with MFA are an indispensable pair to protect accounts in the digital age. This is a small habit, but brings great efficiency in keeping personal and organizational data safe. Email and social networks are the two most important digital communication tools today, but at the same time, they are also the top targets of hackers. Therefore, each individual needs to equip themselves with basic security measures to protect their accounts. For email, there are three principles to pay attention to. First, enable multi-factor authentication (MFA) for services such as Gmail and Outlook to add a layer of security beyond the password. Second, regularly check for unusual login activities to promptly detect unauthorized access. Third, absolutely do not click on suspicious links or attachments, as these are common ways to infect malware or steal information. With social networks, privacy management is very important. Set up a mode to limit public sharing of sensitive information, allowing only friends or trusted groups to view. In addition, it is necessary to enable warning notifications when logging in from unfamiliar devices to detect intrusions early. Finally, do not use the sign in with Facebook or Google function for every application, because if the main account is compromised, all the link services will be affected. Email and social network security is not complicated measures but starts with small habits. Just by following these basic principles, each person has significantly reduced the risk of losing their account and better protected their digital life. Personal devices such as computers and smartphones are important gateways for us to access the digital world. If not well secured, they will become weak points for data to be penetrated. For PCs and laptops, there are 3 basic measures. First, update the operating system and software regularly to patch security holes in time. Second, turn on the firewall and antivirus software to prevent threats from the beginning. Third, encrypt the hard drive with BitLocker on Windows or FileVault on macOS to protect data in case the device is lost or stolen. For smartphones, which are used every day and contain a lot of personal data, it is even more important to be careful with security. First, set a screen lock with PIN, pattern or Face ID to prevent unauthorized access. Second, turn on the Find My Device function to be able to lock or erase data remotely when the phone is lost. Third, limit the installation of applications outside of official stores such as Google Play or the App Store, as applications of unknown origin have the potential to contain malware. Finally, manage the access of applications, only allowing the use of the camera, microphone, or location when absolutely necessary. Personal device security does not require complex solutions, but a combination of basic habits and available tools. When computers and phones are secure, our data and online accounts are also better protected. Digital well-being is understood as a state of balance between the use of digital technology and the physical, mental, and social health of people. This concept does not stop at information security, but also extends to the quality of life in the digital environment. There are 4 core elements to building digital well-being. First, control the time spent online. Avoid falling into internet addiction, which can cause stress and imbalance in life. Second, protect personal data and privacy, because personal information is the foundation of safety and trust in cyberspace. Third, interact healthily on social networks. Know how to select information, avoid extreme arguments, and respect others. Fourth, ensure digital safety so as not to negatively affect real life, which means using technology as a support tool, not letting it dominate or harm relationships, work, and health. Digital well-being is about living and working in a digital environment in a safe, healthy, and sustainable way. It is the key to making technology truly serve people, instead of people being dependent on technology. To live and work healthily in the digital environment, we can follow the principle of 3 balances. These are information security, that is, protecting personal data, privacy, controlling what is shared and who has access, and mental and physical health, maintaining a balance between online and offline life. From this principle, there are some specific practices that each individual can apply. Regarding digital safety, start with basic settings such as activating multi-factor authentication, regularly updating software, and using antivirus software. At the same time, know how to manage the time spent online, even perform digital detox, temporarily stopping using digital devices for a period of time when necessary. Equally important is the skill of filtering information, avoiding being affected by fake news or harmful content. Regarding mental health, limit sharing too much private information online, because this not only poses security risks, but also easily causes social pressure. You should maintain healthy habits in real life such as reading, sports, meeting friends, to balance your dependence on digital devices. And when you encounter serious problems such as cyber abuse or violence, do not hesitate to seek support from family, school, or specialized organizations. Personal digital security is not only about security skills, but also about the ability to manage time, select information, and maintain mental health. Only then will technology truly serve a safe, healthy, and happy life. In a digital society, each individual is not only a beneficiary of technology, but also a subject with clear rights and responsibilities for their data and online behavior. Regarding personal rights, there are 3 core points. First, each person has the right to have their personal data protected according to the provisions of law and service policies. Second, the right to access, edit, or delete their own data when necessary. And third, the right to be provided with transparent information about how organizations and businesses process personal data. Along with rights, each person also has the responsibility to build a safe and healthy digital environment. First, it is necessary to not indiscriminately share sensitive data, because this poses many potential security risks. Second, it is necessary to respect copyright, not to disseminate or use illegal content. Third, it is necessary to proactively report fraudulent behavior, fake news, or harmful content for the community to handle. And finally, maintain the habit of digital hygiene. Change passwords regularly, check security settings to minimize the risk of intrusion. Personal rights and responsibilities in the digital environment always go hand in hand. Only by knowing how to protect our data and behaving responsibly can we contribute to creating a safe, transparent, and sustainable digital ecosystem for everyone. In an organization, information security depends not only on technology, but also on management policies and human awareness. These two factors must go hand in hand to form a solid collective shield against cyber threats. First of all, regarding security policies, organizations need to develop clear internal regulations on data management and access authorization, ensuring that each individual only has access to data necessary for work. At the same time, it is necessary to comply with domestic and foreign legal frameworks such as the law on cyber security, GDPR, or ISO 27001 standards. In addition, preparing an incident response plan is extremely important to promptly handle and limit damage when an attack occurs. In parallel with policies, employee training is the second pillar. Periodic training programs help employees identify common threats such as phishing, ransomware, or social engineering. Organizations also need to conduct incident response drills through forums such as tabletop exercises or red team/blue team to practice quick response skills and effective coordination. More importantly, build an information security culture throughout the organization so that each individual is aware that they are a link in the overall security system. Technology is only one part, but policies and people are the deciding factors. When an organization has both a clear governance framework and a knowledgeable team, the collective shield is strong enough to protect data and maintain trust in the digital environment. In the age of technology, not only information security or laws are important, but also a code of conduct is needed to ensure that people use digital technology responsibly, transparently, and respect the rights of others. That is the concept of digital ethics. There are 4 core principles that form digital ethics. First, respect for individual privacy. Any action of collecting, using, or sharing data must put the safety and rights of users first. Second, honesty when sharing information. This means not spreading fake news, not using technologies like deepfake to cause harm or manipulate public opinion. Third, social responsibility. Technology must be used to serve the community's interests, solve social problems, instead of being abused for profit or harm. Fourth, fairness and transparency in data processing and artificial intelligence applications. Users need to know how their data is used, and AI systems must operate transparently and without bias. Digital ethics is the foundation for building a sustainable and humane digital environment, where technology not only brings convenience, but also contributes to strengthening trust and responsibility in society.
Tiếp theo chúng ta đến chương 6.3 chính sách bảo mật và quyền riêng tư.
In the context of strong digital transformation, Vietnam has issued many important legal documents to regulate information security activities and protect citizens' privacy. First of all, the main legal documents include Law on Cyber, Security 2015, Law on Cyber, Security 2018, along with guiding decrees and circulars. This is the fundamental legal basis to ensure that activities in cyberspace take place transparently and safely, in which there are a number of core concepts clearly defined. The Law on Cyber. Security emphasizes the protection of sovereignty and national interests in cyberspace, while the Law on Cyber. Security focuses on data security, cyber attack prevention, and information system management. Both provide a list of prohibited acts, such as spreading malware, cyber attacks, illegally collecting or disclosing personal data, and spreading false information. A particularly important issue is privacy on digital platforms and social networks. Vietnamese law has a basis for protecting privacy, typically Decree 13/2023 on personal data protection. Accordingly, personal data is defined as information that can directly or indirectly identify an individual. This data is divided into basic data, full name, date of birth, address, phone number, etc., and sensitive data, finance, health, biometrics, political views, religion, private life. Each individual, called a data subject, has clear rights and obligations. Rights include the right to transparent notification, the right to access, edit, delete data, and the right to withdraw consent when data is processed. At the same time, individuals also have the obligation not to share false data or cause harm to others. To ensure privacy, there must be principles and procedures for data processing. Only collect when necessary, with the consent of the subject, use for the right purpose, and ensure safety during storage and transmission. Responsibility belongs not only to individuals, but also to organizations, businesses, and state agencies, units that must apply technical, administrative, and legal measures to protect personal data. Finally, measures to protect personal data include encryption, data anonymization, access control, staff training, and regular security risk assessment. These are essential steps to minimize the risk of data leakage and misuse. Vietnam has a relatively synchronous legal corridor. 2013 Constitution affirms the inviolability of private life, personal and family secrets. 2015 Civil Code, Article 38, detailed regulations on the protection of private life and personal secrets. Law on Cyber Security, 2018 regulations on activities to protect national security and social order in cyberspace. Law on Cyber Information Security, 2015 regulations on ensuring information security on the network, including principles of protecting personal information. Decree 13/2023/NDCP, detailed regulations on the protection of personal data. Code of Conduct on Social Networks, 2021 Building Ethical Standards for Behavior and Conduct on Social Networks. Cyber Security, ensuring that activities in cyberspace do not harm national security, social order and safety, and the legitimate rights and interests of organizations and individuals. Cyberspace, a network of information technology infrastructure, telecommunications networks, the internet, computers, etc., where people perform social acts without being limited by space and time. Cybercrime, the act of using cyberspace and information technology to commit crimes as prescribed in the Penal Code. Cyberattack, the act of using cyberspace to sabotage or disrupt the operation of telecommunications networks, the internet, information systems, etc. For example, an e-commerce website collects emails without notification violation. In the Vietnamese legal system, the 2018 Law on Cyber Security is an important document to ensure national security and safety for people in cyberspace. First of all, the law stipulates the protection of important information systems, especially in areas such as banking, telecommunications, energy, and e-government. These are key infrastructures, which, if attacked, will cause serious consequences for the entire socio-economic system. Second, the law requires foreign enterprises operating in Vietnam to store Vietnamese user data within Vietnamese territory. This regulation helps strengthen management capacity while protecting citizens' personal data from the risk of being exploited abroad. Third, the law also empowers competent authorities to request organizations and enterprises to remove bad and toxic information, including content that distorts, incites violence, disrupts security and order, or affects personal honor and dignity. Finally, an important principle is to absolutely prohibit all acts that violate national security in cyberspace, such as cyberterrorism, cyber espionage, or inciting the overthrow of the government. For example, TikTok was warned for toxic content, organizing and carrying out activities against the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, distorting history, denying revolutionary achievements, insulting religion, and discriminating against race. Posting false information that causes confusion among the people and damages socio-economic activities. Prostitution, social evils, human trafficking. Posting obscene and depraved information. Conducting cyber attacks, cyber terrorism, cyber espionage, and cybercrime. producing and using tools and software that hinder or disrupt network operations or illegally infiltrate other people's systems, for example. TikTok was warned for toxic content. The core objective of the law on cyber security is to protect information and information systems, ITS, on the network. The law focuses on preventing acts of unauthorized access, use, disclosure, modification, or destruction of information in order to ensure three basic principles of information security: integrity, confidentiality, and availability. However, to fully understand, we need to clearly distinguish between the law on cyber security and the law on cyber security. Cyber security focuses more on the technical aspect. That is, this law stipulates measures to protect the integrity of data and information systems against incidents, attacks, or malware. This can be understood as a technical shield to protect data and technology infrastructure. Meanwhile, cyber security focuses on the political and social aspects. This law protects national security and social order and safety in cyberspace and prevents and handles acts of propaganda against cyberterrorism or sabotage of national security. In other words, this is a security shield to maintain the country's stability in the digital age. For example, TikTok was warned about toxic content. First of all, network information security is not only the responsibility of the government or technology experts, but of all organizations and individuals. Every user who connects to the network plays a role in maintaining its safety and reliability. Second, all activities related to network security must comply with the law. They should always align with the goals of protecting national security, state secrets, and social order. Any action that compromises these values can have serious legal and ethical consequences. Third, when responding to an incident, such as a data breach or cyber attack, we must act carefully to protect the legal rights and interests of all parties involved. Importantly, we must never violate anyone's private life or personal secrets in the process of solving security problems. Now let's look at Article 7, Prohibited Acts. There are several key points to remember. It is prohibited to prevent or interfere with the transmission of information, or to access, damage, delete, modify, or copy data illegally. No one is allowed to attack, disable, seize control of, or destroy information systems. It is illegal to distribute spam or malware, or to set up fraudulent or phishing systems that deceive users. Another major concern is the illegal collection, use, or distribution of personal information. Privacy is a legal right and must always be respected. Finally, individuals or organizations must not illegally access encrypted information or cryptographic secrets belonging to others. In conclusion, ensuring network information security requires both technical measures and moral responsibility. By following these principles and avoiding prohibited acts, we contribute to a safer, more trustworthy digital environment for everyone. Constitution 2025. Article 21. Everyone has the right to inviolability of private life, personal secrets, and family secrets. Information on private life, personal secrets, and family secrets is guaranteed by Law Civil Code 2015. Article 38. Private life and personal secrets are inviolable. The collection, use, and disclosure of information must be with the consent of that person. International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Vietnam is a member. The Convention affirms that no one shall be arbitrarily interfered with in their private life. The data subject has the following rights: right to be informed, the right to be aware of the data processing activities. 15. Right to consent, the right to agree or disagree to allow the processing of data. 15. Right to access, the right to access, view, and rectify data. 15. Right to withdraw consent, the entitlement to withdraw any consent previously granted. 15. Right to data erasure, the right to request the deletion of one's data. 15. Other rights include the right to restrict data processing, right to data portability, right to object to data processing, right to complain, denounce, and initiate lawsuits, right to claim compensation for damages, and the right to self-protection. Self-protection of personal data, respecting and protecting the personal data of others, providing complete and accurate data when consenting to processing, participating in promoting and disseminating personal data protection skills. Children's rights, to be protected, to have access to information, and to keep personal privacy when participating in cyberspace. Responsibilities of service providers: to control content, prevent and delete information that is harmful to children. Responsibilities of families and schools: to ensure the rights and protection of children when participating in cyberspace. Processing children's data: Decree 13/2023 must have the consent of the father, mother, or guardian for children aged 7 and over. Principles of personal information protection. Article 16. Individuals protect their own personal information. Organizations and individuals processing personal information are responsible for ensuring network information security for the information they process. Processing personal information is only for the purpose of ensuring national defense, national security, social order and safety, or other purposes as prescribed by law. Collecting and using personal information. Article 17. Collecting information must have the consent of the information subject regarding the scope and purpose. Only use collected information for purposes other than the original purpose with the consent of the information subject or at the request of a state agency. Do not provide, share, or disseminate collected personal information to third parties, except in cases where there is consent from the subject or request from a state agency. Digital platforms often own the following types of data: social networks, data from photos, locations like /shares, mobile apps, collect contacts, GPS. Common risks: ID card and passport leaks, selling data for marketing, phishing to take over accounts, identity fraud for loans. Risks: advertising, tracking, manipulation, fraud. Example: 1.3 million Vietnamese Facebook accounts were scammed, 2023. Example: Cambridge Analytica scandal, 2018. Consent of the data subject. Article 11, Decree 13/2023, Effectiveness. Consent is only valid when the subject clearly knows the type of data, purpose, processor, rights, and obligations. Form: must be clearly expressed, voluntarily in writing, voice, ticking the consent box, message syntax. Silence or no response is not considered as consent. Consent can be partial or with conditions attached. Withdrawal of consent of the data subject. Article 12, Decree 13/2023. Withdrawal of consent does not affect the lawfulness of the previously agreed data processing. When there is a request for withdrawal, the controller and related parties must stop processing the data. Withdrawal must be made in a printable, copyable format. The data subject is required to delete the data in the following cases: it is no longer necessary for the original purpose of collection, consent has been withdrawn, objection to processing without a valid reason, data is processed for an improper purpose or in violation of the law. Time limit: data deletion must be carried out within 72 hours of the request. Authenticating user information when registering a digital account. Securing user information and accounts. Providing user information to specialized forces upon a written request. Preventing and deleting information that violates the law within 24 hours of the request. Data storage in Vietnam. Enterprises collecting and processing data of Vietnamese users must store this data in Vietnam. Establishing a branch or representative office in Vietnam for foreign enterprises. Warning about potential cybersecurity risks and guiding preventive measures. Developing a rapid incident response plan. Immediately handling security vulnerabilities and malware. Reporting incidents to the specialized forces for cybersecurity protection. Applying technical solutions to prevent the risk of data exposure, leakage, or loss. Immediately notifying users when a data leakage or exposure incident occur. Upon discovering a violation, the data controller/processor must notify the Ministry of Public Security, Cybersecurity Department, within 72 hours. Notification content: a violation description of the nature of the violation, information of the assigned staff member, description of potential consequences, description of measures taken to resolve and minimize harm. Understanding their rights, checking security settings, strong password, two-factor authentication, reporting abuse, data protection, limiting sharing, updating software, backing up data. Specific rules: should use real names, self-management and securing accounts, sharing information from official, reliable sources, not posting content that violates the law, offends others, or spreads fake news. Carefully reading the terms of service before registering, using strong passwords, two-factor authentication, limiting the public sharing of sensitive information, being cautious of strange links, phishing emails, checking privacy settings on accounts, promptly reporting when an account is hijacked or impersonated. Vietnamese law is increasingly being perfected to protect cybersecurity and privacy rights. Users need to self-protect their data. Privacy rights and personal data are rights that are legally strictly protected. Data processing must comply with principles, especially the consent of the data subject. Both service providers and users have responsibilities in protecting information security. Information security (ATT) is a shared responsibility. Thank you for listening.